Thanks for everyone for staying for the last talk. I was slightly bummed out that I got the bum slot. When I first met the Metro guys, I was speaking at a conference and got the bum slot there too. So I think they just thought, right, she's fine at that one. We'll put her on that one. I stand between you and drinks, which is never a good idea. I think the only thing is that it's 3:45, so it's not actually a kind of a late session. Otherwise, I would have a few more people kind of itching to get to the bar. Today I have been asked to talk about the screen's not showing, by the way. Could you help me, technical person? Sorry, just technical hitches. I'll carry on introing it. I've been asked to talk about a view from the eyes of the consumer, and actually my kind of subhead that I put in was what your customers really want from your brand. But actually, I'm not here to tell you that, because if I was here to tell you what they want from your brand, then I'd be a complete genius, and I'm not, unfortunately. I think nobody can tell you exactly what customers want from your brand, because your brands are all different, and therefore leading very perfectly into personalisation and how important that is. Thank you, technical genius. So just a really super quick intro to me. Obviously, you can look me up on LinkedIn or whatever, but there's my Instagram, my Twitter as well. So I have had the pleasure of working with some amazing brands through my career. I am a proper girly girl, clearly, by the brands that I've worked for. I've managed to plot my way through shoes, handbags, jewellery, makeup and hair, and my friends all bet on where I'm going to go next, and what categories I can cover next. I also am the co-founder and commercial director of runningandheels.com, which is a women's lifestyle content site, and a collection of over 150 journalists who write for us. So have a look, see what you think, and let me know. And I think we're actually working with some of you guys on an advertising basis as well. Today I think was summarised by this quote actually that I found, which is enormous there. Sorry, everybody. And I think it's a great quote from a guy over at Adobe. Marketing in 2016 is all about experience. In this digital age, your brand is now the sum of your customers' experience. That, in the subtext, to me really means what he's saying is the brand is not what you marketeers sit in a boardroom and discuss your brand is about. It's actually what the consumers decide your brand's about, and it's very much determined by their experience of you as a brand. It's also it's giving customers what they want, but it's also about standing out from the crowd against other brands doing that and getting noticed by being entertaining. Creating compelling experiences in whatever environment consumers are in, be it physical or digital, is the key to success. And the quality and originality of marketing content becomes as important as how it's delivered. The technology to target consumers anywhere and any time and any place is now widely used and almost expected by the Gen Z and millennials of this world. So what can brands do to stand out from the crowd? So I thought that was quite a good quote to set the scene in terms of what we're looking at today, which is the agenda. Okay. So we're talking about the customer, basically. The customer and the paradigm shift, the role of the customer as an influencer, customer influence trends, customer first roadmap, and a quick summary. So I thought this was quite good. It's marketing jargon of a paradigm shift, but I really genuinely believe there is a paradigm shift going on, and as marketeers, we're all part of that. And the shift being to customer control, consumer control. They're determining how we set out as brands, how we communicate with them as brands, and in fact, a lot more in terms of what products we release, where our brand goes. And it challenges the foundation onto which most brands were built traditionally, because traditional brands really believe that they can set out what consumers want, when consumers purchase from them, when consumers interact with them, but actually now the consumer has shifted to being in control of that. Demanding consumers seek one seamless global brand experience and more personalised interactions. They're actually seeking that from us, which I think is super interesting. Clicker. And consumers want their favourite retail brands to remember their preferences and activities and use that information to shape every point of contact. So consumers are determining that they want personalisation. They want to hear from us in a personalised way. Not a creepy way, back to the presentation first thing this morning, but in a way that helps them get the most out of you as a brand. And to attain that kind of level of personalisation, brands, I think, and us in the room need to shift from what is a largely siloed internal culture to one that's highly collaborative. You know, I think the sort of buzzwords of the last few years in omni-channel, multi-channel, cross-channel, all of that sort of thing, actually it just needs to be retail. Retail is all these different channels now. And we shouldn't think of it as businesses as silos. We need to join that together to really have the best consumer contact. The role of the customer as an influencer. We touched on influencer marketing throughout today and how important the single customer experience is when they experience your brand and what impact that can have. And I wanted to put some stats up here from Mary Meeker's presentation. It's a great deck for this year, showing how the consumer has changed and how that impacts influence. So the millennial consumer, of which I just about scrape into, is a text communicator, and Gen Z is image communicator as a difference, which I think is a really interesting. There's a load more information on this in the Mary Meeker deck, so I recommend looking it up and pouring a glass of wine alongside it because it's a big old deck, and maybe a bottle of wine. But I want to bring this out to show you the image piece in terms of communication and how important that is to us as brands. And you can see here from the research they did in terms of how many photos are shared on platforms per day, and also that Facebook own over half of those platforms that they're shared on. I think one of the really interesting things, we've talked about Snapchat a few times today. I haven't tried out the filter yet, though I will do later. I think one of the interesting things is Snapchat now accounts for, or in 2015 accounted for more images than 2013 was shared altogether every day, which is just fascinating how much that platform's grown. So consumer control is very much linked to social media, and so therefore consumer experience. Social media is the thing they're gonna talk about your brand on the most, which leads me on to influencer marketing. So. There's a lot of talk about influencer marketing being super key, and I absolutely agree with it, but what I don't agree with is the official explanation, because the official explanation is partnering with social content creators, those with key audiences on Facebook. So essentially getting into bed with the best blogger or the best celebrity, etc. And utilising their audience to support your brand. And that's absolutely hugely valuable. There's undoubted value in working with influencers in that way specifically because they can create trust and authenticity. They can reach a targeted known audience. They can generate active engagement. They create faster and cheaper branded content, which is key for brands who need that depth of content. And they drive ROI. And in fact, the chart to the right of the slide is from a survey in terms of what extent do you trust the following forms of advertising, and the top one is recommendations from people that I know, so or know or follow, basically. But what I wanted to touch on very quickly as part of this section is, are we thinking too literally about influencers and who those influencers are? And actually, if we tailor our marketing for a customer point of view to individual customers or personalise our marketing, could those customers also be part of our influencer base? Do we as brands need to look outside of that paid partnership and PR and more looking at everybody basically as an influencer? And if you can excel in influencer marketing, is that about excelling in customer excellence and excelling in customer experience and personalization? And just on the everyone can be an influencer, I think pretty much everybody's seen this, I imagine, and nobody thought she would be an influencer, and you know, in theory it wasn't paid for, but she was one of the greatest influencers of the year, I think, and showing that actually you have so many opportunities to create something like this as a brand if you give excellent customer service. And another percentage that came out of the Mary Meeker deck actually was that 73% of millennials feel it's their responsibility to help friends and family make smart purchase decisions. So not just feel like they want to or you know, they think it's a good idea. It's their responsibility to help people make recommendations. So I think if these kind of people have a positive brand experience with you, if they feel that your brand is tailoring an experience to them as consumers, then they're much more likely to talk about you to their friends, family, relatives, etc., because they see it as their responsibility. And in terms of who should tell the brand story, you know, I think, yes, there is absolutely a value in that kind of celebrity publisher piece, and there's a value to building up your social networks and brand fans. But in terms of the relevance, your social influencers are obviously there, but your friends and your customers are actually where you can have the most significant impact on relevance. I've just noticed my amazing PowerPoint diagram has not gone brilliantly when transferring over from Keynote to PC. Sorry about this, but it wasn't particularly gorgeous anyway. I apologise. I do actually have a degree in graphic design, seemingly, but I've lost that skill, I think. But the reason I wanted to show you this is it's my amazing diagram of the sweet spot of influencing. I think we're quite linear as marketeers and thinking, now somebody's taking a photo of it. Don't take a photo of that. I'll send you the nice one. So yeah, I think we're quite linear as marketeers thinking about influencer marketing being the bloggers of this world. And I think there is a piece in there as an influencer partnership marketing is almost what we should call it. But if you combo it with the traditional push marketing channels and using every customer as an influencer, I think that's the sweet spot of influence marketing. And that definitely is all underlined by content being king. I think on the panel this morning I was repeating the word content a few times, and I definitely a sort of flag waver for content being the kind of core of what we should be doing as marketeers, and content also helps with the personalization journey. And I think I've said this is my sort of soapbox, but if you make everyone part of the story, then they'll tell your story for you. And I think that says it all in terms of how to cater and determine your customer journey for a personalised experience. So I wanted to also touch from influencer marketing to customer influence trends, and I think these are trends in retail and trends that I'm sure a lot of you guys will have seen within your own brands or from experience in the industry. But I think a lot of these trends have actually been influenced by the consumer, some of them technology as well, and the ability to do some of this stuff, but definitely their success will be impacted by the take-up of the consumer. Many clicks later, here we go. So the first one as a trend is that experience is winning loyalty. So the millennials and Gen Zs of this world were surveyed in terms of what they valued as the most important thing when they're making a purchase decision or selecting a brand. Their values were service, personalization, convenience, and value in that order. And I think actually as the slightly older consumer would potentially put value as a higher rank out of those four, but service and personalization is there for these guys, and I think that's really going to impact how we make brand decisions and marketing decisions going forward, because gone are the days of oh well, we'll just put 20% off and we'll be better than our competitors. Actually, if you've provided a really amazing experience in your store, on your website, etc., then that's what what's going to buy you the repeat purchase. And I think we've talked a lot about repeat purchase and importance of that today. I think social shopping is something we've touched on again today. I think in the last panel, I think there was a lot of talk about Facebook and the value of Facebook and the impact of Facebook. And I think if I'd have stood here this time last year and said how many people in the room had been directly influenced or within a social media platform for a purchase, probably not many hands, but let me get hands for this time. So you've been on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, one of those, and you've been directly influenced by and made a purchase. Okay, yeah, about half the room maybe, I think. And I think that will grow. I think very, very much so. It used to be that social media was very much around the kind of telling the brand story, which I still believe it's hugely valuable for, and a great expression of the brand's personality within that channel. But it's now actually about an influence to customer conversion and coming sort of lower down into the consumer conversion funnel. We haven't touched on it today, but I think I've popped it in because I think it's really interesting. But frictionless commerce, I think, is a trend. I think everyone's probably heard of the Amazon Dash buttons and the whole Internet of Things that's, I think, going to be mentioned more and more going forward. And I'm not sure if anyone's heard of the Nordstrom Click and Collect extension, but they're actually now using geolocation to find out where people are when they're coming to collect their purchase, and enabling a sales assistant, to come down to the car and give you your purchase directly, which, yeah, I mean, I think only in America, where they have drive-through banks and drive-through all of that sort of stuff, would that work. But it's amazing, isn't it, where they're sort of taking that. And I think, just as a side note, I think that a recent survey said 13% of UK shoppers are now ready for what we're calling the Internet of Things, so the fridges that order stuff for you and all of that sort of thing. And I think, as I said, some of that's customer influenced in that customers are ready and want that, and some of it's technology influenced in terms of that sort of thing exists now, and we're evolving that take-up. And the other reason I put this in is that I think there's a real opportunity, if we're thinking about that as a trend, looking at how we can personalize that for our brands, how that makes sense. I mean, certainly if I look at GHD, having a reorder button would make no sense whatsoever. Where, on their dressing table by their hair straighteners, why would you do that? But there could be some way of communicating with them using Internet of Things and to encourage reuse of the product, giving them style tips, et cetera, et cetera. So there's infinite possibilities that we need to be thinking about, I think. Advanced payment options to cater for the global consumer, so including MPOS in-store solutions, all of that sort of stuff. I think we were talking about the value of collecting data in-store and online to enable a personalised journey and a personalised communication. And I think when we were talking about sort of relationship, when the gentleman was talking about relationship statuses, that kind of initial step of getting their data and getting them across the line, but taking them through to married bliss or whatever he called it, which is excellent. But I think this will go more and more into stores. So those of us who are omni-channel need to be thinking about this and thinking about how that then impacts the whole consumer journey, and thinking about how that can help personalise. I think right at the beginning presentation this morning, it was mentioned that it's kind of slightly creepy if somebody recognises your name when you walk into a store. But recognising your potential demographic or purchase potentials could actually be something if it's part of the training for the sales associate. So data becoming super key there as well. And then a seamless global experience to become key. So consumers' expectation from brands is that they're catering for them wherever they choose to be. So gone are the days, I think, where you expect to have a different brand experience when you go across to Europe or when you're in the States. You expect the same experience with a brand, the same as you expect the same experience in a store versus on their website. And I think we as brands need to acknowledge that as a trend, because it's core to how we personalize experience, and very important to what we're doing going forward. And then we touched on this as well earlier in terms of pure plays becoming omni-channel, and I think that is about the whole showrooming trend, of course, but it's also about brand experience, and it's also it's why brands do pop-ups, it's why brands do offline experiences. It's about creating that one-to-one connection and that personalised connection with a brand. Ooh, hang on, not getting on with this clicker, right? There we go. I've quoted myself in this one. I think everyone needs a good quote. I'm hoping, well, I liked the Adobe one, so I just thought, I'll quote me, and then hopefully that'll take off. So this section in the presentation, I'm talking about sort of customer first experience and customer first approach to what we do. So I think to sort of kick that off, I wanted to quote myself and say, I don't know if I've ever actually said this, maybe this is the first time, is that one of the most underestimated challenges facing many organisations is how to move from gut feel decision making into a data-driven culture. And I'm sure the Metro guys experience this on a daily, hourly basis when they're talking to new clients and even existing clients, in terms of not sending an email because you think it's going to work, but sending an email because you know it's going to work based on the data that you've got around the consumers that you're sending it to. And I think there's still a huge shift that needs to happen culturally for a lot of retailers, certainly ones that I've experienced and worked with. So yeah, not what you think your customer may want from you, but or what third parties are trying to sell to you, but what your customer data tells you that they want. And I think it does require a massive pervasive, I can't even pronounce my own quote, that's terrible, isn't it? Which can often be accelerated by a strong thought leader. So people in this room who have come here to learn today about that personalisation, about how key data is to underline everything. I think we can be the voices within organisations to talk about how that shift needs to happen, to shift to data being so super key in terms of customer experience. I really think we, as an e-commerce kind of collective, have these sort of years of, I think we've talked about years of big data, years of mobile, I really think this is the year of customer experience and how important customer experience is. Brands are starting to really shift towards understanding, because that's where they get their consumer and that's where they get their competitive edge. So I wanted to share this because this is how we aligned thinking at GHD, which is the last brand that I was working with. When I joined GHD, the approach to customers was sell them hair straighteners, and then sell them more in 5 years' time, maybe. But we don't actually know anything about what happens between that journey, and we don't have any way of, particularly of getting them back, of re-engaging them. And also, there was very much quite a linear approach to how the consumer behaved in each market. So it essentially was do what we do in the UK, copy, paste, and maybe translate. But that's about it. So what we did was a huge amount of research in terms of consumer behaviour and consumer consumption of our product in the different markets, in our different core markets, and then realigned how we were thinking. And I think this was a real core step to get people, to get the organisation thinking from the point of the consumer. So our first question that we asked ourselves for anything, so any decision making, any marketing campaign, was who is our customer in each market? And if we couldn't answer that, we couldn't continue. So quite key to have the data there. And then the second one, what do they want from us as a brand? So not what do we want to give them, but what do they want from us as a brand? What are they saying to us that they need? How do they use our website and what part does it play within the overall purchase process? So the reason it's the website there is because that was the consumer that we knew the most about, because that was our direct B2C business, because the other part of the business was selling through resellers and department stores. So utilising that data and really putting that back into our decision-making process. And how would they use our website if they could, these consumers? What are our gaps? What are we not giving them? So we did a lot of quant and qual insight research in terms of, and we had the time and the sort of flexibility to do this because of the way our products were, in that, obviously between launching sort of one or two, maybe even products a year, what we wanted to do is really get to know the consumer. So we spent a lot of time saying, what could they do? What are we missing out, guys? And what can we develop that will help you? Versus what can we just plug in because somebody, an agency's told us it's cool, and that we need it. And sorry, guys, definitely, you'd always need data, so I didn't mean that. But and then what's out there in terms of third-party suppliers? Sorry, my arrows are all. I'm doing well on graphics today. So yeah, what's out there in terms of third-party suppliers to join these gaps together? So who's doing what we're talking about? And I think Emetria is such a great example of people who are looking at it from that consumer point of view. So how to join those communication lines up for brands. And then my final one, how can we prioritize based on usability, ROI, and market? So when we made decisions, how do we prioritize? But obviously the finance people will need to know what the ROI is going to be, and we always wanted to have an ROI on what we were doing, but usability became before that because we were talking about it from the consumer base and from the market base. And actually, I'm not going to go through this in huge detail, but actually what we were able to then do is utilise that thinking in terms of how we prioritise projects at GHD. So we were able to get everybody on the board involved in how to in that approach. So not just doing something because somebody thought we needed to do that next, or spending huge amounts of money on a new system of this or this, but actually going about it in a way that it was business critical, business required, or nice to have. But each of those decisions in terms of what went in those funnels was based from the customer point of view. Then I just wanted to share this, which is the 2016 brand experience. So it's voted by customers, the top 100 brands for customer experience. And I thought I'd put it up there. I mean, obviously, there's, they're big brands, and they're also brands that, potentially have been involved with creating the survey, who knows. But definitely, I think, there's lots of opportunity here for us to learn from these sort of brands. First Direct is a boring banking brand, essentially, in theory, but actually what they've done is put customer experience at the heart of every communication that they have, therefore creating, they haven't even got the best deals on the market, they haven't, but they're actually creating, and they're looking at that philosophy of customer experience as the first thing that they want to do. John Lewis, I think we all know and love, probably, in terms of that customer experience, that consumers rave about them, and their consumer base is slightly older than the demographic we're talking about in terms of the Gen Zs, etc. But the consumers are talking about them, and therefore they're creating a consumer influence base that's enviable. And then I think one, because there's a variety of sizes of brands in the room, I think one that's really interesting is that Lush comes so high up in this survey, and in fact I think the year before they were number one in 2015, and super interesting that they're there again with the sort of big boys, I guess, and the reason they are there is because their company ethos is all about the consumer, it's all about the customer. So I just thought it would be worth sharing that, and there's the full report online, so it's worth having a little look up. And now, just in summary, I kind of wanted to go back to this as a diagram, just to embarrass myself further that the graphics didn't come over from the keynote presentation. But just to say, I think we as marketeers do get quite siloed, and I think there's I think there was a great question earlier, which is how do you determine what out of this personalisation you can do? So even if you have got all of the data and you know all this stuff about the consumer, how on a busy day-to-day working life do you take the time out to do this new stuff, do this interesting stuff? How do you prioritise what that is? And I think one of the really interesting pieces of today that I've learned is that personalisation, everybody's talking about it. It's super key to what we're all doing, and I think the priority needs to be with that. But you can absolutely take that in sort of slow chunks, and the same with influencer marketing. You can take that in slow chunks and have an impact if you as brands are focused on the consumer being at the heart of everything that you do. So I think that's it.